Wildcard, can you take us over to Portugal, I believe, where the Football Ferns have been playing? What have they been up to?
Yeah, mate. So they finished their Algarve Cup campaign in 4th place. They drew with... we already talked about the first game, didn't we, on one of the podcasts last week? So they drew with Belgium 1-1, won that one on penalties, then played Italy in the semi-final where they lost 3-0 pretty comfortably. We weren't really in that game very often, although it was tricky. Like, you can see a few... what I wrote about it was it wasn't really a step backward so much as it was maybe just a bit of a reality check. Like, they made 4 changes and that exposed the depth a little bit, which is something we already knew about this team. Like, that's the same deal we've said so many times about the Black Caps in Australia in that test series. Like, if you don't have your top players available, you're going to struggle, and it just makes that margin for error so much smaller. And yeah, they made a couple silly mistakes, and players who wouldn't normally be in the 11 were making some of those mistakes for the first couple goals they conceded. But also they were just playing against a better team, which in and of itself is going to make it so much harder, and they're going to punish those little mistakes so much more in a way that Belgium maybe didn't. So understandable the way that one went. It meant also that they got to avoid playing Germany in the final. Instead, they got to play Norway, and Norway was a team that they beat last year in the lead up to the World Cup, and Norway had quite a good World Cup, so it was, a game they weren't going to be favoured in necessarily, but they played quite well. They were, arguably the second best team, but that doesn't necessarily matter. It doesn't matter like who has more of the possession, it's about who scores more goals, and Hannah Wilkinson scored one about 10 minutes in, which was brilliant. She'd gone 15 games, I think, without a goal for the Football Ferns, hadn't scored since either 2017 or 2018. I suppose I should check that right now. It was September 2017 when we played against the USA. So she was obviously very much due, and I'll say a word on her in a sec. Also, like, when I say 15 games without a goal, let's not forget there was a very serious knee injury in the middle of that, so which also meant playing off the bench a few times, not getting as many minutes in those 15 games as she could have anyway. But the Ferns then conceded pretty much straight away after that, which was frustrating, and then battled away nice enough. I thought the second half was probably their best performance of the entire tournament, but then they did this thing that they keep doing by conceding a late goal. Across their last 9 games that they've played, they have a 1-0 defeat against Wales, in which they lost to a 91st minute goal. They have the first game of the World Cup against the Netherlands, lost 1-0 to a 92nd minute goal. Cameroon, the third game at the World Cup, lost 2-1 to a 95th minute goal. Granted, that was with the Ferns going forward, trying to snatch a winner at the end, got hit on the break, and a loss was no worse than a draw for them. They had to win to go through, but still. Then the start of this Algarve Cup, there was the game against Belgium where they drew 1-1, conceding a 90th minute goal, and then here they lost 2-1 to Norway with an 86th minute goal. So it's just a concerning trend that's there, and it could be fitness, it could be game management, it could be just the pressure of having to defend against better teams who are just pumping the ball into the box and really going desperate for goals. All of the above probably is the right answer, but it's just something that the Ferns have to work on and have to get better at, because when you're talking about scraping big results at big tournaments, the last 10 minutes of games, the last even 5 minutes of games is the most important, and we're not going to be beating teams like Norway or Belgium or Netherlands especially. Netherlands went on to be the World Cup beaten finalists at that tournament, so we're not going to be beating teams like that 3 or 4-0 and not having to worry about it. We're going to have to be closing out these games if we're going to get anything, so that's a big work on, as they say, but lots of little positives as well. I think we saw a lot of more sort of positive type of play in a realistic way. Like, they weren't just going crazy and sending players forward and leaving themselves vulnerable. They found good ways in order to find balance, and I think one aspect that I was quite excited by was this little, they're working on more of a high press, being able to put players forward, trap players, looking to turn the ball over and attack and transition. It worked best against Belgium. Against Italy, they just passed through it because Italy were too good. Against Norway, you saw a bit of both, and I think there were signs there of the combinations not quite being ready, where you didn't quite get them pressing as a unit. It's something you have to be doing, 3 or 4 players all thinking as one. If you're doing it individually, it just doesn't work. But decent signs, and they created enough chances to do something against Norway. They just didn't take one of them, and that's another aspect. We're talking coming into this tournament about them having to create more shots, more shooting opportunities, but then once you get to those shooting opportunities, which we saw here, they did create more, they just didn't finish them. Like, that's the next step, is you've got to be able to score them as well, which is tough. But so it goes. I think they're a better team for this experience. It was a very timely and helpful one, and we saw glimpses of, and not just glimpses, but progress of how they're trying to build towards the Olympics in order to be able to do these things. So that's all good. 3 players I want to highlight. One is Katie Bowen, who I thought was pretty excellent, especially against Norway. I thought she had a great game there. She has a pretty important role here in that sort of pressing thing, because she is the more advanced of the two midfielders, Rhea Percival being slightly more defensive there. Also, shout out to Rhea Percival, who made her 150th cap against Norway, which is unprecedented for a Kiwi footballer. That's just an incredible, almost hard to fathom achievement there, and even more so because she's only 31, I think. She could play she could be around at the next World Cup for sure. She could play 200 games if she sticks in there, and she's still one of the Ferns' leading players, so, guaranteed first 11. But with Katie Bowen as the more attacking of the two, she gets to be the one who determines the press. And you see when they decide to commit, you've got the striker up front, the striker sort of hovering around, trying to guide things. This is Hannah Wilkinson, trying to guide things down one side or the other, filter it towards somewhere. Then you've got another wide player, depending on which side you're on, is going to also jump into that. But it's when Katie Bowen steps up and commits from midfield to pressing, that's when it's the go button. Here we go, let's do this sort of thing. So she's got an important role, and I thought she's pretty much the perfect player in the Ferns squad to be able to do that. And she good tournament, especially against Norway, very good. I thought the best player of the tournament for the Ferns was Ellie Riley. I haven't seen her play this well for the Ferns for a couple years, to be honest. She was excellent against Belgium, excellent against Norway. I wouldn't say anyone was excellent against Italy just because of the nature of the game, but Ellie Riley still super quick, getting good deliveries into the box. She set up Hannah Wilkinson's goal by just driving one. It was a shank shot, but she did great to get into the position. She's someone who can really really contribute for the Ferns going forward, but also an excellent defender, as we've known. But it's her ability bringing the ball forward and being an extra player in attack that really puts her over the top. And captain leading by example. Hopefully she already seems invigorated. This season hasn't even started in America, but she already looks invigorated by going to Orlando, where hopefully she'll play a whole lot more, having been more of a bit part player for Chelsea and Bayern Munich in recent times. And then the other player is Hannah Wilkinson, who, it's tricky for Hannah Wilkinson because she is the centre forward, the lone striker in a team which is struggling for goals, which means that automatically she's under more pressure than anyone else. And I think that's the kind of thing that she can thrive upon. I think she's got exactly the right personality, but it does mean that I got to hold her to higher standards. It means that Tom Samani in particular has got to hold her to higher standards because it's just a difficult job. And with her height, with her strength, she has the physical attributes to do it perfectly. It's just she's got to tidy up on her touch sometimes. You got to remember she's coming back from a serious knee injury as well. She's never been the most prolific of goal scorers, which is why it's good to see her score in this one, because as soon as she scored against Norway, the next 2 minutes she had almost scored a second, almost set up one as well. Just the immediate confidence she got from that, which is beautiful to see, because the more of those goals that go in, the better she's going to be playing. And especially in the second half, there were 3 or 4 chances, sort of first 15 minutes of that half, which Wilkie was pretty prominently involved in, with little flick on headers and stuff like that. Those kind of things are the kind of things that she can bring to the game that nobody else can in the Ferns squad. So it's pretty important to see those. It would be nice if we could have put a few more away. She had 1 or 2 chances herself she might feel she could have done better with. She has got a lot of praise from the sort of Ferns media circles. I don't know that she was excellent, because I think with her it's always the case of you get a lot of good and a lot of bad, but I think certainly this is a role that she's building into, or that she that she has all the tools to be successful with, and I'm pretty excited. Not some I don't think she'll 10 out of 10 performance wise in this tournament, but I think what we saw from her is the blueprint for going forward. And you tidy a couple things up, you put a couple more, up that like shots to goal ratio kind of thing, and we got someone pretty useful who can be an enormous factor. Like, of all the players in this team, she is the one player who can raise the Ferns' chances of winning games at major tournaments more than anyone else. So, yeah, all of that on the table now. I suppose we move on to something else.
The Wellington Phoenix have won their last 3 games Wildcard, which is pretty damn impressive. This win streak goes back to 7th of February. They lost to Perth Glory 4-2. And then they 1-0 over Melbourne City, 2-0 over Western United, 3-1 over the Central Coast Mariners. And that has them third, 33 points, 3 points ahead of Perth Glory, 3 points behind Melbourne City. What I want to know from you, Wildcard, just this, like, taking different angles on topics that we touch in on a regular basis. Explain to the Kiwi sports fans, what style of football are the Wellington Phoenix playing? Are they, for example, like a counter-attacking team? Are they an intricate passing team? Are they a team who relies on going long and tip-ons and a target man? What is the general style of football that the Wellington Phoenix play with? And, well, I'm interested in that because it's obviously being quite successful. And I just wonder if we can break down the style of football that they are playing.
Yeah, that's not an immediately easy one to answer, because I think of all the options you threw out there, they can do a little bit of all of those things. And, I mean, there are some overwhelming traits that you see from them. One is that they've got a very solid, organized backline, and a team which, like, guys like Stephen Taylor, are never going to back out of a challenge, just like full commitment kind of thing. Their midfield works very hard. Guy like Cam Devlin, Alex Rufer when he plays as well, always jumping into challenges, like just maybe not the biggest guys, but certainly like guys that are just always going to be in your face and making things difficult for the other team. Moving forward, they are a little like they've got that sort of 4-2-2-2 kind of shape going on, which sometimes one of the strikers drops in a bit deeper and you can whatever, but it does mean you've got guys, Ulysses De Vere and Reno Piscopo mostly effectively playing as like a left and a right wing, but they've got a lot of freedom to move around and link up, which means that they can be a team that knocks the ball around quite well. So they are a team on attack who does look for a lot of passes, not necessarily just pumping the ball into the box over and over, but trying to really like work overlaps with their fullbacks gunning forward. Lots of little movements, but no like big sharp things. They can't be the counter-attacking team they were last season without like, they just think of how fast Roy Krishna is and what a good goal scorer he was. Gary Hooper's as good a goal scorer, but he's nowhere near as quick, right? And David Ball's not particularly fast, even though he's got a extremely high work rate. He doesn't, he's not a sprinter. So they can't be the same like lots of balls in behind the defense kind of thing over and over and looking to hit teams quickly like that. They do need to build things up a little more, and when you get like Kakache playing little 1-2s sort of thing in the attacking third, getting in behind, cutting it back or squaring it, those kind of things, that's a very common aspect of the Phoenix's game. Tim Payne trying to do similar things on the other side, although Tim Payne is a bit more of a pure crosser of the footy. They've got varieties, but what was really interesting about the way they beat Central Coast is that they actually did do that ball over the top thing. They really did look to hit Central Coast's back three, which when they've played against teams with back threes, that's actually been something they've struggled with a little bit more, because you don't get so much room to pass it around, because you got this, the extra defender in the back line. It's just tricky for guys like De Vere in particular to find the perfect pass with less space to work in. So what was really interesting about that Central Coast game is that they had a goal where their first goal was just beautiful passing, just an excellent little all 3 goals actually started from quick restarts after set pieces, 2 throw-ins and a short free kick in their own half. But there was still like a relatively long ball involved where like the Piscopo picked it up on the sideline, squared it to De Vea, who took a little bit of time to shape up, and then just threaded a beautiful pass through to Kakache sprinting through, who scored it. But then the second goal was even more notable from that one, because it was Piscopo lobbing one over the top to, I think it was Gary Hooper, right, scored the goal. So, and then the third goal was Alex Rufer pumping one over the top for Soterio. Those two goals very similar, long balls lifted over the defensive line to guys running in behind. That's not a way that we've seen them play a lot before. But that just goes to show that thing about Ufuk Talai, which is that every week he seems to, he just must go crazy with the old scouts bills and stuff like that, because he just seems to every week have a little plan, a different plan, a way that the team adjusts to the opposition they're going to play. And more often than not, it's successful, which just goes to show a pretty intelligent coach at work, I think.
I like that. So a bit of adapting to your opponent, adapting your team to whatever situation you're faced with, and being nimble and mobile in the sense of not being rooted to anything in particular, and always able to just tinker and tweak things.
Yeah, sounds about right. I mean, they are a team that, in the attack and third, they are going to look for lots of little short passes, linking up 1-2s, knocking it around, 1 and 2 touch stuff. But that's the baseline, but they've got plenty of room, and they've got the kind of players who allow them to do this as well, to deviate from that in order to find something that's going to be a little more successful against whoever they happen to be playing. Speaking of which, who they happen to be playing this week, is they're at home to Melbourne Victory on Sunday night, 6:20 kickoff, which is a little odd, but home to Melbourne Victory. Melbourne Victory, that means Marco Rojas coming back, by the way. Melbourne Victory have been having a pretty rank season, though. They're not up to much. They're pretty far off where are we? They're sitting 9th, 7 points out of the top 6, so not happy days for them, which makes that, any game the Phoenix are playing at home, the way they're playing at the moment, they've got to be expecting to win. You can adjust those expectations based on the way the game unfolds, but they should be expecting to win that game for sure. But then after that, they've got to play 3 days later, Wednesday night, 9:45 p.m, against away to Sydney FC in that game that was rescheduled from the other week. So that, Sydney FC are the top team on the ladder. That's always going to be difficult, but Phoenix, the way they're playing, this is an opportunity for them to make a big statement, and if they can win. Sydney also play Perth on the weekend. On Saturday night they host Perth, so you'd hope Sydney get the points there and do Perth some damage. Melbourne City are at home to Western Sydney Wanderers, which is a game they'll probably be expected to win, but with the Phoenix having a game in hand on them, playing twice this week, if they win both those games, they can go, they can be sitting second when we talk this time next week, which is rather incredible to think about from a Wellington Phoenix team. The Phoenix have never finished higher than 4th during a regular season, so it just shows, the levels that they're reaching. But at the same time, these are two deceptively tricky games. The Melbourne Victory might not be having a good season, but they're always capable of doing something excellent. They tend to play pretty well against. Actually, we've been drawing a lot of games in the last couple of seasons against the Victory, but I don't know. At home, you would hope they can take 3 points. Away to Sydney is ruthless, but with the table as tight as it is, really at the top, outside of Sydney running away with things, this could be a pretty if they can get a couple big results this week, the Phoenix are in a fantastic place. If they can get at least one win from those 2 games, they're not going to be any worse off than they are right now, which is sitting 3rd, with 3 points clear of 4th as well. 3rd and 4th is going to get you a home semi-final. 2nd is going to get you a first round bye and then a home semi-final, leading win that and you're into the grand final after that. It's an incredible place for the Phoenix to be. I'm not used to this. It's kind of crazy. No one's used to this. They've never been in this kind of situation before.
Beauty.